who their ancestors were, but they carry an inherent contempt about their own culture, about their own identity, about their own traditions. That contempt is not something which we have inherited by our own ancestors, but it has been poured into us by the colonial education system, started from the British era. Talking from my own experience, from my own ancestral experience, I belong to Kashmir. It was not a particular case of British there, but the fundamentals remain the same. The destruction of the Gurukul system, the destruction of the Hindu identity among the generations, the young generation of Hindus, how it has completely destroyed the very identity of who I am as a Hindu, of it in my day-to-day life of being a Hindu. The whole thing gets taken away. And one of the other parallels that we see in the contemporary era is also Canada, for example. There as well, the same colonial forces have, through the residential school systems, carried out a very oppressive and very destructive policy in which they brought in the young generations of the indigenous children and completely brainwashed them against their own very culture. Now, the problem is that in Canada, at least the Truth and Reconciliation Commission and all these, at least some lip service has been done to address those situations. But for Hindus, it is not just that nothing has been done, it is even denied, and the oppressor still continues to portray as oppressed, and the oppressed is treated as the oppressor. Even now in this discussion, for example, the Oxfam report that we talk about, it says a lot about the global south and the whole current discourse about the global south. The problem is that even in this current discourse, Hindus are not a part of the global south. They consider Hindus still as the oppressor. When they talk about Indians and what they have gone through, even in the same story, in the same narrative, Hindus continue to be the oppressor. That is something we have to address, and that is something which is carried on even till today because of the colonial education system.
Yes, very true, Maharaj. And like you have shared, even your personal experience, there are billions of Hindus around the world who have gone through the same oppression, whether it is the Hindus who still exist in Bharatavarsha, or even the Hindus who were literally shipped as indentured laborers, who were forcefully migrated to as slaves to parts of the Americas or parts of Africa, who were literally taken as slaves and literally lost their whole identity, were treated so cheaply, whether it is in terms of health, not giving proper food, not giving the basic human rights, or whether it is in their culture. They lost touch with their own culture and had to live as their colonizers instructed them to, or even their identity. Everything was stripped away from them, and finally, they became just a product of colonialism. And that is what the Hindus today, the 2 billion practicing and living Hindus, are facing the effects of this colonialism even today.
Yes, Maharaj. And also one more point, very important, which I would like to add here, is that in this whole struggle of the Hindu resistance, it is only one voice, and that is of the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, and that shines forth. And the whole struggle of bringing forth the voice of all the 2 billion Hindus and giving a platform, right? Taking this, the message, and not just the message, the story of the Hindu persecution, the Hindu Holocaust, the Hindu genocide, and also including the persecution which the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism personally has gone through, just to revive and just to basically take the story to the world, tell the truth to the world. So much of persecution he has to go through. And in the story of the Hindu genocide, it is only the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism which has taken to the international forums all these facts, this whole narrative, the true narrative, the truth about the Hindu history, what has happened to the Hindus, and even the whole parallels with whatever is happening contemporary, as I was putting out the point about the Canada. All these have been taken to the international forum, including the United Nations. So many reports have been published by the United Nations accepting the truths that has been shared by Kailasa. and all these facts have been put forward. So just a small point I wanted to add. Of course, we'll be touching further in detail about the role of the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism in Kailasa, but just to keep it in the context that the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism is the only voice which is taking the case of the Hindus to the international forum.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Brahmasukha Maharaj. We also have Paramayoga Maharaj who wanted to add in to Brahmasukha Maharaj. Please go ahead, Maharaj.
Yes, Nityanand. I also wanted to touch on the point that actually in various letters that have been at this point made public, so it is readable for everyone who's doing their research, that the introduction of the British school system was directly targeted to actually conquer not only India, but also conquer Bharat and actually convert Hindus to become proper Christians. So it was told that due to the strength of the Gurukul system, the backbone of India, of Bharat, it would not be possible to penetrate into the continent and conquer it unless they were to uproot the entire system and replace it with a new one, which is more aligned with the Western values. So in order to be able to first break the economy and then actually be able to take action, because there was too much economic strength in Bharat, and with the Varnashrama Dharma, the societal strength was also too much. It was a closed, stable system that had to be completely uprooted in order to be able to conquer and convert Bharat.
Yes, very true, Paramayoga Maharaj. And like you said, the whole stability of the Sanatana Hindu Dharma, whether it is in our education, we had millions of Gurukuls which are all across the Bharatvarsha, or whether it is the strength of our family, the strength of our culture, the Varnashrama Dharma, where each person was allowed to pursue his dream and not be made as a worker or as a slave of his master. Same way, in our finance, the Hindu economy was one of the most richest and the highest economy before the colonial period. And like this, in every aspect of the whole Bharatvarsha, the Bharatvarsha was the most prosperous, most ancient, most culturally active civilization until the the colonization happened. And
It's
yes, we also
basically
have with us. Yes, Paramayoga Maharaj, go ahead.
Yes, basically, the point that I wanted to make is that this is actually all public knowledge. Even the direct letters between the royalty and the missionaries is made public. So it is not something like a narrative that we are telling. This can be found out by anyone who is doing their research. So the very communication between the royalty and the missionaries is very clearly showing that this was a targeted effort to uproot the education system, destabilize Bharat, and conquer it in this way. Thank you.
Yes, Maharaj. Actually, here I want to take a moment to add a quote directly from John Sullivan, who was at that time the president of the Board of Revenue in 1840 of the British government. Quote unquote, he says, "Our systems act very much like a sponge, drawing up all the good things from the banks of Ganges and squeezing them down up the banks of the Thames." So this metaphor actually captures the economic drain from the Bharat to the Britain under the colonial policies. This actually leads us to the next question, which is following the what discussion we are having, which is what are all the various spiritual, cultural repercussions of the generations of poverty, oppression, and exploitation under the colonial rule? Yes, Ramnath Maharaj, you can go ahead and you can add to this. Okay, I think there's a bit of disconnection there. Would you like to add in the point over here?
Yes, yes, Maharaj. So before the colonization, right, the colonial intervention happened, the Hindu system, the Bharat had produced phenomenal breakthroughs in math and science, including the inventing the zero in 300 BCE, and binomial theorem in 200 BCE, and gravity in 1114 CE, demonstrating that it's the scientific sophistication was way before, it was way advanced before the happened by the colonizers.
Yes. Yes, Maharaj. Actually, it's a very important point that you had. In fact, even when we look at the point where you're speaking about, right, erosion of our indigenous knowledge systems becomes a very, very important part of what we are looking at. The thing is that despite having all of this great knowledge that was given by the ancient wisdom that is given in the Vedas, the Agamas, the Upanishads, and the great advancements that we have had in terms of whether it's Ayurveda, mathematics, astrology, all of these things were devalued and appropriated in a way that all of these things were absorbed into them, repackaged as something that is British given, and all of it stripped out of the Hindu identity and given back as if there is something great to every one of us. So that is actually an important point that you had shared. Yes, Ramnath Maharaj, would you like to
Yes.
add over here?
Yes, and also
go ahead, Maharaj.
Actually, what you are sharing, Maharaj, what you said, that it has been repackaged into their own, right? It is literally a plagiarism of all the Hindu sciences. Whatever the Hindus have contributed to the whole world, whatever the Bharat has contributed to the whole world, the modern plagiarism of the whole thing has been repackaged and presented as though it was their own, literally doing a plagiarism.
Yes. And in fact, this plagiarism goes down to various different things. For example, the zero and the decimal system. And one of the most notable ones, it's many times attributed to the Bharat mathematicians, most notably Brahmagupta in the 7th century CE and Aryabhatta in 5th century CE, where literally they brought in the values of pi, brought in the discoveries to the world, but all of these were later packaged and told as the discoveries in the West, even though they were documented centuries earlier in the Bharat text, in our ancient texts. Similarly, with the Bharat medicine system and Ayurveda also, about how at one point in time we have recorded text of all the diseases, not only that were prevalent at that time, but also what were to be coming in the future and recorded for those as well. But again, once again, quoted and packaged in a way that is represented to the Hindus themselves, that it is something that the British is giving us. Yes, we have Sukada Maharaj would like to add on to this. Yes, Sukada Maharaj, please go ahead.
Yes, Maharaj. So just to add on the economic exploitation that we as Hindus has faced, through the centuries. So actually, the British deindustrialized the Bharat and dismantled the vibrant manufacturing and textile industries, which were very huge actually at that time in Bharat. And the whole export, was just reduced to exporting the raw materials like cotton and metal, while being forced to import British-made goods at highly inflated prices. Similarly, the skilled Bharatvarsh artisans were pushed into agriculture, leading to mass poverty and famines. And taxes in British rule during the British rule in Bharat were the highest in the world, which is actually reaching to 50 to 80% of the gross income, which was literally putting a crippled debt to all the citizens of Bharatvarsh at that time. And by the 19th century, the Bharatvarsh had become the British largest revenue source, an export market, an employer for British officials, all funded by the local taxes. And also to add for the famines, actually, as per the statistics, that 35 million people were actually died during the famines, which is 6 times more people than during the Holocaust. And and these famines didn't just happen naturally. There have been a lot of policies put by the British during that time, which not only not helped by actually severed the situation even more, and even where like these difficult times were happening, the British actually kept exporting the huge amount of grains to the Britain and to the other countries also, which extremely contributed, if not at all, was the main cause for the death of 35 million people. And more than that, to add to this point, there was actually a policy that British rule had put in place not to help during the famines. They actually believed that helping people would interfere with their economy. So this brutal attitude actually ignored the suffering of Hindus just for the sake of economical gains, even though 35 millions of people had to die for this. And
Yes,
I- hmm,
very true, Maharaj. Whether it is the economic drain that happened from the whole Bharatvarsha, the rich Hindu civilization, or whether it is the taxation of, whether it is the taxation in terms of the actual monetary taxation, and also literally the grains which they had to give in taxes. And even though their crops had failed that year, they had to pay their own food, they had to pay their own savings in of their grains to the colonial governments in taxes. Or and because of this, which resulted in famines and starvations. And also, like you had mentioned about the exports and the exploitation of the resources, where literally the peasants were made to work day and night without even the basic human rights. And even after that, they were still charged for taxes and of the goods that they produced for their own families, their own communities. So in every level, it is a man-made systematic, the mass murder, what happened, the whole Hindu Holocaust is not something where some people think that it just happened due to the situation. It is systematic, and it is man-made, and it is planned by the colonial governments to completely eradicate the Hindu civilization, the whole civilization of Bharatvarsha.
exactly. Yes, Maharaj. Actually, I have some more statistics here that farmers were taxed heavily, sometimes up to 80% of what they would have earned, and they had to pay these taxes even before harvesting the crops. So naturally, the farmers were not able to afford this and were forced to sell their land, animals, or sometimes even family members to survive. So, and also, there was situations where it was as a policy in Britain to stop whenever the one family or somebody from outside were trying to help the Hindus at that time. They were actually stopped, and they were trying to hide all these crimes, which shows that they were cared about their reputation more than lives of people. And also, a very powerful thing Maharaj wanted to share, that since Bharatvarsh has gained the independence in 1947, there actually hasn't been a single large-scale famine. So this shows that the British policies were the reason, the sole reason for these famines, hiding the crimes against Hindu people and entire humanity. And how it actually, how it, quote unquote, contributed to the Hindus, to all of us, to our inner image, to our spiritual heritage, and even the trust that we have on the science. So, and because it was hidden, right, the whole crimes was hidden. The kind of brainwashing that it happened to the Hindus, where now it is so even difficult sometimes to bring these facts out because it is so cruel. Many Hindus don't even ready to accept that this is actually that it has happened to us. And the literally you see the only being, the only person who is bringing this truth to light is the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, Bhagavan Sri Nityananda Paramashivam, who is continuously revealing the truths about these things and contributing on all possible levels, be it in the level of voicing out for people who don't have a voice, telling all this truth to humanity, to investing heavily into the inner infrastructure. They continuously delivering thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of discourses, programs, and initiations to really rebuild that inner image, to bring the Hindus to completion, and really regain the trust for the science that has been revealed and in course of time has been lost.
Yes, Maharaj. It's a very true fact that you are sharing here. We also have Ramnath Maharaj who wanted to add in a couple of more points over here. Yes, Ramnath Maharaj, you can go ahead.
Yes. Thank you, Maharaj. So, when we look at the stats, that $64 trillion was looted by the Britishers, but that was looted, and before that, so many Islamic invasion happened. And during those period also, Hindus were looted left and right. When we look at the amount of wealth that was looted, one thing we can say that Hindus were the most richest. And statistically also, we know that we contributed to the 40% of the world GDP. And all this was because our whole lifestyle was rooted into the Hindu principles, the knowledge, the science, everything that we learned from the Hinduism. We got to know also from the statistic that not just Bihar and Bengal, but even in the Madras and the various other states of the Bharat, Bharat had more than 100,000 of Gurukul. Every 400 students used to have one Gurukul. That shows the richness of Hindu lifestyle. And by the time of 1978, in Bharat GDP became almost 2%, where it was 40%, it became 2%. And that was attributed to Hindu. It was being called as a Hindu growth rate. So rather than calling at the country GDP, it was attributed to Hindus that our growth rate is low because we are so much attached to the Hinduism. We are resistant to change our lifestyle. We are resistant to change the belief that we have, which was rooted in Hinduism. So one side you see that because we are Hindu, we are so rich and we are brutally looted, raped, murdered to and at the end of the time it is saying that we are poor because we are Hindu. So all this was done so that we leave the practice of Hinduism. We were forced to hate our own religion. We are forced to believe that if I am a poor, if I am in the situation where I am, it is because I am a Hindu. And we can see that today Hindus are global minority. We can see that there was a time when the 56 nations were Hindu nations, from the Bangladesh to Pakistan, Afghanistan. But now, not just in the Southeast Asia, but overall globally, we have become minority. We may have a large population, but the practicing Hindus has reduced to few numbers, which is a global minority. And the whole thing goes to the persecution and the loot that had happened to the Hinduism.
Yes. Yes, Parandaman Maharaj, would you also like to add in over here?
Yes, maybe I can add some small things. I think the philosophy and the logic is also something that what to say, that make the the power manifestation and all the background of the science of realizing the gods and the inner truth and cosmic energy, the philosophy and the logic was suppressing with his arrogance and with this feeling of we are superior.
Yes.
This whole science of becoming Paramashiva, becoming God, becoming one with the source. I
Right.
think this is
Yes, Maharaj. Actually, that's a very important point where this knowledge system was completely eradicated, and not just eradicated, but also made, like how Ramnath Maharaj also had shared, making us falsely brainwashing us that this is the way to live. That was another important aspect that was done in terms of brainwashing every one of us, even till date, which continues. That actually moves us to the next part of the question, a follow up question to the next, which is looking into the sociological impact. How was the colonial exploitation influenced? How has the colonial exploitation influenced the caste system, which is the Varnashrama Dharma, both in its interpretation, implementation as well?
Yes. So when we talk about the impact on the caste system, so actually the Varnashrama Dharma was such an intricate system developed by Bhagavan Paramashiva himself and the Vedic, the Hindu rishis for the whole civilization to have a systematic approach towards having your own Varnashrama and the successors, such as let's say there's a Stapati, the artisan, and he makes the deities for the temple, and he knows the science of how to carve the deities, the proportions according to the Shilpa Shastras and the various other agamas. And when he gives this science to his son, and when he teaches his son becomes the perfection of him, because right from a young age he is able to derive the science from his father, and at the same time he is able to reinvent that science. He is able to add more and more relevancy, more and more development, more and more R&D to that same science. But in the modern day, if this same Varnashrama is being called by the colonists as the child labor, is being called as oppressing the next generation, and all of this are the wrong thought currents, the wrong agenda, and the various myths that is being perpetrated by the colonists, and which is literally come inside the bio memory of the current Hindus, and they believe that the Varnashrama Dharma is wrong. They believe that the age old system of Varnashrama Dharma, which made Hinduism, which made the whole Bharatavarsha as the highest GDP in the whole world, this system, just because of the brainwashing and the false narratives which are being perpetrated by the colonists now, present day Hindus, think that the Varnashrama Dharma is wrong and should not be practiced. And that is the impact that our own Hindu indigenous, the success, the way of success to the best economy in the world, the highest producing GDP in the world, was destroyed by the colonial rule.
Adding to Tattva Maharaj over here is the point also where the ideology that was also presented to everyone, in fact, the laws that were put on this behalf, for example, the labor law, right? The labor law where it says that the child should not be working, whereas it was not about work. These kind of laws were actually put into place by the government itself as a law to make sure that the entire tradition is systematically completely destroyed. And that is the reason the government, a Hindu nation, is required. Because Not just that after the colonizers left and things have changed. No, even after the colonizers have left, the impact of them on every single one of us continue to exist in a much, much deeper way, where we deny Hindus around the world, deny their very Hindu identity. How many of you here, like especially all of you who are watching us live and seeing us live from around, how many of you feel ashamed of your Hindu identity where you did not want to associate yourself with Hindu identity until you met Swamiji in your life, where you got to know about what Hinduism is and what Swamiji has revealed for every one of you? This is a fact. This is how every one of us are at this given point in time. Yes. Brahmasukha Maharaj, would you like to add in over here?
Yes, Maharaj. So yes, as we were discussing upon the point of the caste system as it has been portrayed in the modern discourse, so to speak, it has nothing to do with the original Varnashrama Dharma system, which is an inherent part of the Hindu society. And how it has been portrayed, the history dates back to the British era again in the 1871 census when they created this artificial caste construct and categorized all the people into these various groups and into this artificial hierarchy, so to speak, which actually formed the atrocity literature on the grounds of which they could justify enacting the Criminal Tribes Act, which I think Jnanatma Maharaj started the very discussion with. So this whole history of how the colonizers create the atrocity material by misrepresenting the native cultures. The Varnashrama Dharma is a very peculiar, a very important, significant example of it. And how the truth has been completely hidden. How the truth of the Varnashrama Dharma, how it is the very core and the central, essential aspect of the Hindu society. And as the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism is also again and again pointed out, it is only because of the Varnashrama Dharma that the Hindu society, the Hindu economy has been so rich historically. It is only because of the Varnashrama Dharma that Hindu civilization is even existing, the only living civilization among all the ancient civilizations, the 49 ancient civilizations, all of the rest have been destroyed. Only living is Hindu civilization. The reason being the structure of the Varnashrama Dharma, which preserves the various aspects of the society in a proper, we can say, decentralized manner. Various powers are decentralized, and even anyone attacking a particular aspect of the society cannot dismantle the complete society altogether. So there are various aspects, beautiful aspects to this Varnashrama Dharma, which has to be brought forth proactively by the Hindus without any fear of being judged, without being apologetic, because it is the very golden rule and the crown of the Hindu society is the Varnashrama Dharma. And what we know as the caste system or the caste discrimination is only and only a byproduct of the divisive, the treacherous, and the very cunning policies by the colonizers.
Yes, thank you, Maharaj. Yes, as you said, the Varnashrama Dharma is actually one of the very intricate part which even kept the social stability of the whole Bharatvarsha. Whether it is the crime rate, there was zero crime rate, and this has even been recorded by the British and other invaders, other colonizers who came to Bharatvarsha when they saw that the houses were just kept open and the gold was open. It was an open civilization. Where there was no crime, there was literally the records from the various 19th century when the British colonizers came and saw the Bharatvarsha. They saw whether it is the crime rate or even the sustainability of the village economy. Each village had their own farmers, had their own artisans, had their own priests, and it was a economy centered on inclusivity and harmony amongst all the varnas rather than what was portrayed falsely by the British colonizers. Yes, Brahmasukha Maharaj, you wanted to go ahead?
Yes, Maharaj. And actually, even taking this discussion further, uh, these policies by the British, for example, categorizing the entire Hindu society into this false construct of caste, and the portraying, Hindus as the oppressors, and how the so-called lower caste have been oppressed historically, and all of that, the false generalization and atrocity literature that has been created. The same atrocity literature now informs the current discourse, global discourse, the whole global south, global north that we know of as currently. It's a very interesting development that has happened, is that the whole narrative about the whole oppressors on one side and the oppressed on the other side, the racism on the other, the whole critical race theory, it has been very cunningly been mixed with the caste theory. The caste theory perpetuated by the British, saying that whoever has been historically the global north, Hindus are a part of that, because caste system and the racism or the racial system, of which the colonization is a byproduct, are essentially the same. It is something which we Hindus have to grapple with, and we have to face it in the in the upcoming future, because we ourselves don't really realize how the whole discourse is very rapidly evolving into a very dangerous phenomenon, where we actually don't really have a friend, neither in the global south nor in the global north. There is no real ally for Hindus who will take the true history and the persecution of Hinduism to the global stage. That's what makes Kailasa as the essential component, as the essential platform for taking this the truth of Hindus to the international forums.
Yes, thank you. Very, very true, Maharaj. In the success of the Varnashrama Dharma, whether it is the education which has been kept alive, the knowledge which is kept alive by the Brahmanas, and whether it is the healthcare of the whole society, whether it's the spiritual growth and the culture of the whole society, or whether it is even the environmental sustainability. As Hindus, we do not believe, we believe that the whole environment, whether it is the trees, the rivers, the mountains, we worship all of these and kept the whole environment as a sustainable environment, or whether it is the global trade networks. All of this was kept alive by the Varnashrama Dharma, and even the knowledge science was kept alive by the Varnashrama Dharma. As now there are so many Stapatis, the families of the Stapatis who have come and literally pleaded to the Supreme Court of Hinduism, saying that now their sons or their whole family has gone towards the Macaulay system of education, and their whole livelihood is almost being extinct, because their next generation do not want to become Stapatis. The next generation does not want to actually receive that same science of the Hindu sacred arts. Same way, even with Shivacharyas, there have been so many people from the Shivacharya community coming and literally crying to the Supreme Court of Hinduism, saying that their own family, their own sons and daughters do not want to actually learn the science of the temple worship, and they want to go and they see the success only in the modern Macaulay education, and they are so brainwashed that they're not able to see the success as and the importance of continuing the thousands of year old traditions of being a Shivacharya and literally touching and worshipping the deities, literal manifestations of Bhagavan Paramashiva. And in every sector of the Hindu society, whether it's artisans, whether it is the temple priests, or whether it is even the other arts which are there, in every single section of society, the whole Bharatvarsha has been brainwashed by the colonizers, and our indigenous Hindu arts were almost extinct before the Supreme Court of Hinduism has now come and revived and kept all of these cultures alive for the next generation to even see. So many practicing Hindus, so many living Hindus do not even know of all of these secrets of even the traditions that are there, whether it is the secrets of temple worship, whether it is the secrets of even the sacred arts that are there. In every single one of these aspects, the modern day Hindus do not even know that something like this exists. I'm sure if we ask even the Hindus in Bharatvarsha to name even five agamas, or forget five agamas, to even for them to know what are agamas, they would not even know that something called agamas even exists. They would not even know something called Vedas exist. And that is the level of how much the Hindu knowledge, the Hindu sciences are literally eradicated. So yes, we also have Sri Nityanananda Maharaj who wanted to share. Yes, Maharaj, you can go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Maharaj. I just wanted to share about the Hindu Varnashrama Dharma as a system to transmit all knowledge across all walks of life and society. So there's actually nothing like a caste system in Hindu civilization. That's foreign to Hindus. The caste system is a British system. So what's been told to Hindus and to the world is that Hindus had a caste system, but Hindus never had a caste system. They had even some of the measures across the Bengal presidency from across the 1800s, measures from what Varnashrama Dharma the teachers were from. So in many of the schools, it was always a mix of who was the teachers, not only Brahmins or Vaishyas, it was everyone. And you can easily find above 20, 40, 60, and 80% of teachers were Shudra in schools. So each school may be slightly different, and all aspects of society need to be taught. Farming is not something that is developed in a few generations. That's ancient knowledge that needs to be taught to everyone. So people from all walks of life were teachers in the school. The caste system was not something that's part of Hindu civilization. The Varnashrama Dharma of Hinduism, the involvement to make sure that everyone in Hindu civilization, wherever you're born, whatever you're studying, to make sure that everyone ends up being a useful, successful contributor to society is what Varnashrama Dharma does. It accounts for any possible life situation and ensures that you're supported and to become a successful contributor. So it's ultimately a non-violent structure for society and civilization. And when you look at that, even 2,200 years ago, Bharat accounted for 33% of global GDP. And even 1,000 years ago, the Bharat was accounting for 40% of GDP. So for more than of global GDP. So over more than 1,000 years, Bharat contributed more than 25% global GDP, and as high as 40%. And that's just from evaluated measures. So that measure by any standard today is an enormous contribution. So the perspective that has been put into Hindus' minds is that your civilization has been a failure. But if you just go back a couple hundred years, the measure is that Bharat was contributing 25% of global GDP. So we already know that Hindus had a great civilization, and it was founded, and its strength was the Varnashrama Dharma system. Caste system is really a British imposition.
Yes, very, very true, Maharaj. Literally, it is taking the success just because they were envious and they knew that the Bharat Varsha, the Hindu, Sanatana Hindu civilizational nation, is too powerful for them. They systematically just destroyed and put in their own false narratives to gaslight and brainwash the modern day Hindus all across the globe into thinking that Varnashrama Dharma is wrong and it is racism. Rather, it is their racist ideologies which is being put into a false narrative and trying to impose the Varnashrama Dharma as something which is racist and something which is non-successful. Rather, it is historically proven that Varnashrama Dharma made the Bharatvarsha the highest, most prosperous, most culturally non-violent nation in the whole of the ancient civilizations. Yes, we also have with us Sri Nityananda Maharaj, who would like to share. Nityananda Maharaj.
Nityananda Maharaj. Yes, Maharaj, I wanted to share on the question here that is, how did the colonial legacy shape the global perception of Hinduism and the remnants of those narratives today? And are there remnants of those narratives today? So one of the things that's important to understand, Maharaj, is to understand that the colonial legacy as it is that they just made everyone into clerks. They made everyone into a worker class. And as previous Maharajas have presented, this was the very intention, to make them in appearance as Hindus, but in intellect as Britishers. So this is the system that they put in place. And the education system really chokes people into only having to enter into certain fields and not specialize into vast numbers of opportunities that our Varnashrama Dharma will present. You have an opportunity to specialize, and Varnashrama Dharma and the Hindu systems empower people, empower everyone to be a unique contributing part of society, and ultimately take everyone to a sustainable level of, peace and harmony with nature, with each other, with all of the elements of society, and also creating a sustainable, enlightened civilization. That is the Hindu systems. And this is the legacy of the Hindu systems, but this perception was replaced by the colonial legacy of creating clerks. So, but if you see what is actually the success of Hindus, the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism again and again tells the Hindus to wake up and emphasizes one important point, that it is because of Hinduism, Hindus are successful around the world. And we are actually well known for it. And again, the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism shares that those who maintain a little bit of culture, a little bit of the family values of Hinduism, a little bit of the diet, of the vegetarian diet, having the vegetarian brain, those who maintain those are actually being successful in the world. The heads of all of the biggest IT companies are of Hindu origin. Those who have moved around the world, they are contributors. They are the highest taxpayers. All of them pay their taxes. And there is no crime. We are so moral, so integrated that there is no crime. And they are in the highest contributing positions, whether they are doctors or even government officials or even inside the executive organization of the society, whatever it may be, Hindus hold the top positions, maintaining balance, peace, harmony in the society. Just because they maintained a little bit of their culture, they are able to sustain. And this is how we're actually known to the whole world, in spite of the clerk mentality imposed by the British legacy. And as Brahmasukha Maharaj previously shared, that it was the narrative now that is actually being spread around in many academic fronts is this oppressor and oppressed narrative that we're seeing again and again put. This is just a ploy by those who are in control still, to tell that they were the ones who liberated us from our oppressed past. These, again, the colonizers are coming again and putting the narrative forward that they liberated us from our oppressed past, that they liberated us from our oppressors. And this is the narrative that has the remnants here today still in the world. The caste system and the way the Hindu system is not shown as how it is such a contributing part of society, how it literally, it is the word, it is the blindsided. The facts of Hindus are blindsided that we presented here about them being the highest taxpayers and having no crime and having contributing positions. That's all blindsided by the young narratives that the people, it was the British who brought out the best from the Hindus. And that is the narrative that is, unfortunately, that remains. The remnants of this British legacy is still there, and it is seen in the world. And the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism is beautiful now. You're seeing how he is making the best of the best Hindus come out and showing the world oh Hindus, you have done so much, you have contributed so much, and we do not have to subscribe to any of these wrong narratives that are being again shoved down our throats. Yes, Maharaj.
Yes, thank you, Maharaj. Yes, as you mentioned about how even the present day Hindus think about Varnashrama Dharma in a wrong way, and not just Varnashrama Dharma, they actually think that the whole Hindu civilization is just a bunch of superstition, a bunch of myth, and literally the agenda propagated and perpetrated by the Western civilization are Hindus are people with a red dot in their forehead. And that is the low level cheap image that the Western colonists even imposed on the Sanatana Hindu Dharma and even the people. So, to make you feel inferior, what are these beads or seeds that you put on yourself? Whereas Rudraksha is something that holds the energy. And like this, in every single way of our culture, and literally dehumanizing the Hindu, the Hindutva, the Hindu identity of each Hindu. And that is what the colonial oppressors, that is what the colonists did. We also next have with us Sri Nitya Paramayogananda Maharaj, Nityananda Maharaj.
Yes, Nityananda. Yeah, what you described, Maharaj, is absolutely true. I'm not a born Hindu. And when I announced that I choose Hinduism as my religion, exactly as you described, as I started wearing the bindi, the Trineta Tilak, naturally I would get comments often, and people would ask me how I could align with the unfair caste system that Hinduism subscribe to, that they teach, because that is what is being taught in school, even in the West. The one thing, like if I can really say, I remember learning in school about Hinduism is the misrepresented caste system, what has been branded as caste. And if you really look at it, after the destabilization of the Bharat society and economy, introducing a school system which requires high payments in order to get a high grade education. If you look at the Gurukulam system, which is completely free of cost and is provided to everyone, regardless of their gender, faith, caste, or creed. As Swamiji beautifully says always, knowledge is free in Hinduism. So one of the basic rights that has been denied to the people because they were first literally starved financially and very, very literally starved. And then the cost of their very basic education, which is the requirement to excel in life, right? In order to achieve anything, you need to be able to become a specialist. And with the Varnashrama Dharma putting so much of emphasis on a lineage of craftsmanship or really in any field, whatever field you decide to be in, whatever you're passionate about, whatever you're skilled in, you can excel through the Gurukulam system. Because even if you are born, even if you're born in a certain jati or certain you are in a certain community, you can still decide to develop in a different varna after all in the Gurukul. So if you have that ambitions, you can still migrate and explore all the possibilities. But if you're born into a family nowadays which does not have wealth, no inheritance, or no way to grow, then you will not be able to afford a high-grade education. You will not be able to come out of the cycle. That is one of the reasons why nowadays a lot of labor is actually exported, and many people have to go to the city, have to try to find a job, go abroad, and actually send money back to the family because they're not able to sustain themselves otherwise. So there's very much the after effect of all that has been told before, so many different malicious acts that were directly taken to uproot Bharatavarsha.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Maharaj. And rightly, as you said, even as you mentioned about the not born but practicing Hindus, even for these people across the globe, there is so much of the wrong narrative that is being taught. Even their introduction to Hinduism itself is so wrong because of what they read, because of what they see, and everything is just led, is even told as a superstition, as a myth. So I would also like to ask all of the Kailashvasis, the British often call Hinduism a myth or a superstition. And how did such rhetoric, the wrong wording of our culture, the wrong wording of our own history, how did that impact the self-esteem of the Hindu communities? How did that impact the self-esteem as Hindus? Yes, we have Srinitya Brahmasukhananda Maharaj with us. Yes, Maharaj, you can go ahead.
Yes, Maharaj. So yeah, it's a very not just important, but something which we practicing Hindus, all of us relate to this, practically while growing up in a Hindu household, how we had been continuously brainwashed from our, school education system, how only the Western logic was superior in Newton's laws and all of that. We have been grown up learning and writing exams for, while at the same time denouncing what our own knowledge systems were as superstition, myth, or just, belief system or whatever it is. What that has actually created is a huge, very deep self-doubt. It is literally, it is destruction by creating self-doubt. You don't have to kill your enemy, just create a self-doubt inside your enemy and they will destroy themselves through generation after generation. That's it. A whole generation of Hindus has become completely doubtful, not just doubtful, but contemptful of their own knowledge systems. They've lost the confidence that it is even true. We don't even believe that it is true. We take refuge in the Western logic to even prove our own truths, right? We wait for the Western universities and the Western scientists to prove to us the truths of Vedanta, the truths of Upanishads. We don't use the methodologies of experiencing these truths which are already there inherent in our own systems, which is not really the binary Western logic which we are taught through the Newton's 3 laws or whatever it is. Now the interesting thing is, even what we know as logic today was already a part of the Hindu knowledge systems. The Vaisheshika Shastras, the Nyaya Shastras, all of that was already part of our own culture, and it was stolen. And not only it was stolen, once stolen and digested into the colonial system, the colonial cultures, our own culture was completely discredited and denounced as myth and superstition. So that is the level of racism and hatred and bigotry we have witnessed and we have experienced through generations of trauma. And one important aspect, what the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism has enlightened all of us, is the biggest damage, the biggest destruction that has happened to the Hindu children, I would say, the young generation, is the loss of Vitarka. Now, Vitarka is something which occurs only in the Hindu system, Hindu knowledge system. We know Tarka and Vitarka, Tarka and Kutarka, for example, what is right logic, what is the wrong logic, that we all know. But something Vitarka, which is beyond logic and directly through the feeling connection, experiencing the truths, is something which we have completely lost. We don't even know something like that exists. So it is time for us to go back to our own systems, reclaim our knowledge systems, practice them, right, boldly and confidently. That is the only way we can decolonize our mind, because it has left such a strong negative legacy on the entire generation. And we are actually looking at next 1 or 2 generation maximum. We can actually lose the entire science altogether from the hands of the Hindu, the upcoming Hindu generations. And the whole, whatever science is there, will be termed or labeled only as Western. So the whole identity we are talking about is complete a cultural genocide, even now happening.
Yes, yes, Maharaj. Very true. As you were sharing, the just creating the self-doubt is all that they did. Just create the self-doubt in the minds of the Hindus and in the minds of the young Hindus, where they can just go and even though it is completely true and it is noted and there is physical evidence of the Ramayana and of the Mahabharata, somebody just goes and says, "Oh, this is all just myth. It's all a bedtime story." And that's it. Then the child thinks, oh, did whatever, because the child literally grew up with listening to the stories of Ramayana and Mahabharata and learning them as their ancestors, learning, relating to Bhagavan Sri Rama, Bhagavan Sri Krishna as their ancestors. And when someone calls it a bedtime story, it is literally putting an axe in their whole identity, putting an axe and severing the whole trust that they have on their own, the Hindu identity and Hinduism itself. And that is what the colonists have done to our own history, to our own uh, traditions, and put in their own narratives as a morphed history, as a morphed way of how the whole Hindu Holocaust happened. Yes, also we have with us Sri Nitya Jnanasiddhananda Maharaj. Nityananda Maharaj, you can go ahead.
Yes, Nityananda Maharaj. So you brought up the effect on the youth, on the Hindu youth, and this is exactly the point that I'd like to bring awareness to: the terrible mark that British colonialism has had on the psychology of today's Hindu youth, eroding their confidence and distorting their perception of Bharat and Hindu identity. The imposed education system, which glorified Western values and denigrated Hindu culture, has resulted in a generation of Hindus who are just disconnected from their roots. This mindset is very much evident in the way that many Hindu youths today apologetically acknowledge their Hindu identity, as if it's like a liability rather than a source of pride. They're often hesitant to assert their cultural and religious traditions, fearing ridicule or judgment from their very peers. And this lack of confidence is a direct result of the colonial legacy, which systematically undermined Hinduism and Hindu culture. See, the British colonizers portrayed Hinduism as a primitive and barbaric religion, and this narrative has been perpetuated by many misguided intellectuals and historians who were educated in this very Western tradition. And the impact of this psychological conditioning can be seen in the way that many Hindu youths today are more comfortable embracing Western values and traditions rather than their own. For example, they may prefer to celebrate Christmas and Valentine's Day over Diwali and Holi. And they may even view Hindu festivals as old-fashioned or uncool. This cultural cringe is a symptom of this deeper psychological issue, one that stems from the internalization of colonialist ideologies. Furthermore, the British colonialism has also distorted the way Hindus perceive their own history and their own heritage. The imposition of this of the Aryan Dravidian theory, which posits that Hindus are not indigenous to India, but rather they're invaders from Central Asia, has created a sense of disconnection and alienation among many Hindu youth. So this theory, which has been widely debunked by scholars, has been used to undermine Hindu claims to Bharat and to create a sense of inferiority amongst Hindus. The erasure of Hindu history and culture is also evident in the many Hindu schools and universities in the way they teach history, with the focus often being on Mughal and British periods as opposed to attention being paid to the rich and vibrant history of ancient Bharat. This has very much resulted in a generation of Hindus who are ignorant of their own heritage and are instead fed a diet of Western-centric history. The impact of this psychological condition can also be seen in the way many young Hindus today are hesitant to assert their Hindu identity in public. So they might be afraid of being labeled as communal or intolerant, and may instead prefer to identify as Indian or secular, which is a reluctance. So this reluctance to assert that Hindu identity is a symptom of this deep-seated insecurity and self-doubt that has been instilled in them by this colonial legacy. So this British colonialism has had a profound impact on the psychology of today's Hindu youth, eroding their confidence and distorting their perception of Bharat and Hindu identity. I think it's essential that we acknowledge and address this legacy through the work and the teachings of the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism to create a sense of pride and self-awareness amongst Hindus.
Yes, very true, Maharaj. It is literally generations of brainwashing that has actually led to Hindus being brainwashed to this state where the Hindu youth today does not even want to associate themselves with Hinduism. And that is what is the result of this decades and centuries of persecution, of colonization, of oppression that is going on. And even today, we see the vandalization of the Hindu temples. And when a Hindu that is already broken, when a Hindu who does not even know his identity, when he sees that even his own temples are being vandalized, then that's it. He just loses all sense of self-respect, of respect on Hinduism, and just literally throws his identity away and becomes identity less, for a lack of words. So this is literally the result of what colonialism has done today. Yes, we also have with us.
Sorry, Tattva. Just I wanted to add another point in here. Is also one of the major aspects of how the sannyas sampradaya or the sannyas tradition, which has been systematically delegitimized by the colonial period as well, which continues to have its lasting impacts now in the current generation, especially when we are speaking about the youth and the next generation. People are not ready to embrace the sannyas sampradaya and the tradition because of the negative connotation that has been attached with it, and the way that the sannyasis are mocked as beggars, or the sannyasis are mocked as people who want to run away from the social responsibilities of their life, and how these ideas have been fed by these colonial era, the colonizers, into every one of us, and we continue to hold that till date. And that becomes a very important component of why, despite the colonial period, the so-called colonial period is over, we are continuing to be colonized and continue to live with this same ideologies and ideas. Yes, Mangala Maharaj, you wanted to add in over here. Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Maharaj. So I actually have a first-hand experience story, which kind of ties into the question which you're facing now. So it was an NRI, a Hindu boy who was, his family, they practice Hinduism. They are living in the US, and then just in conversation with the boy, he was telling about how he looks up to different athletes as a source of inspiration, and to discipline himself, and various other things to have good morals and that kind of stuff. So at a very superficial social and moral standing, that may be great and good and all that, but if you take I'm not want to disrespect those athletes or anything, but we have such great beings who walked the planet Earth, so many thousands of years ago, be it Sri Rama or Bhagavan Sri Krishna. We have thousands of people like this whose history is unfortunately, as I think previously it has also been mentioned here, whose history has been now been duped as mythology and as stories. And so that is actually one of the most painful things which is happening, where our own generations, our own next generations do not have the same trust or do not believe. How now, for example, in history we quote so many different historians, or like the Roman Empire, the Greek civilization, how we quote all of them, and those are deemed as history. But unfortunately, the Hindu history, the Hindu civilization, the Vedic history is not given that same status. And unfortunately, that is what is being taught in schools. That is what is also being absorbed by our own next generation as well. And so in multiple aspects, it's like in a multi-layered scenario, this destruction and this demoralization is happening. Not only that, I think many of our viewers will also be aware of not just a little bit over a decade ago, when in the Californian textbooks they tried to portray Hinduism as a very non-violent and a very violent religion. I mean, if you just take the statistics, the Hindu civilization, the Akhanda Bharat was the only nation which did not conquer any nation outside of its borders. And not only that, it was from Bharat that the first diplomatic relations had even started with other civilizations, other continents on across the globe. And we have multiple records of this, of how the Pandyan civilization and the Roman civilization had multiple ambassadors coming and going from each other's nations. How from Kanchipuram, from the Pallava dynasty, had ambassadors in China and Chinese ambassadors in the Pallava dynasty. Not only that, I'm sure many of us are aware of the Chola Empire, of how they did trade and how they built the other nations around in the Indonesian area, in Bali, and so on. And even in all the temples, all the beautiful, huge temples which are there in Cambodia, were built by the Pallava dynasties, where it was shipped from Bharat all the way to Cambodia and built there. So not only is Hinduism the most non-violent religion, we contributed so much to other nations and other civilizations, on the whole global scale. And so in various ways, through different anti-Hindu elements and anti-spiritual elements, Hinduism is being portrayed in such a it's not just being portrayed, it's a systematic conspiracy which is going on to delegitimize Hinduism. But thankfully, with Paramashiva's grace, we have in our day and age the 1008th incarnation of Paramashiva, the supreme pontiff of Hinduism, who is reviving and who has already established Kailasa to prevent this from happening now and to prevent it from ever happening again in the future by legitimizing Kailasa in all the different ways and all the various levels.
Yes, Maharaj. Actually, that brings us to actually a very important part to understand about how the sovereign nation having sovereignty plays a very, very crucial part, because ultimately, by breaking everything systematically, the whole law and the tradition was systematically dismantled. When the British and the colonizers came in, they pulled out all the important aspects that once existed as a very integral part. And now the only way for us to even raise or even look at how can we even get out of what we are stuck with? How can we even rebuild the right Hindu identity? How can we even revive what we lost? The only solution lies with establishing a sovereign nation that the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, Bhagavan Shri Nityananda Paramashivam, has done for each and every one of us through his relentless and untiring hard work. We'd like to now ask every one of you about what do you think as the requirement and the need for establishing a sovereign nation for Hindus, and how that is the only solution. As an incarnation of Paramashiva, what Swamiji has done, what the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism has done for building everything as a seed bank of Hinduism. Like to hear from every one of you in terms of this, about how the sovereign location, the sovereign territory is very, very important for reviving the tradition. Yes, Sukada Maharaj, you could go ahead.
Yes, so as we actually can see that a lot of the systematic destruction that has happened during the British rule was actually through the policy making and using the system to destroy whatever has been established by the Hindu principles. So naturally, we can see that it is very essential to have a place where you have your own principles, where you don't have even the possibility of anybody else coming and using the foreign legal system to destroy what you've built. This is one point, Maharaj. Second one is because through this colonial time, the inner image and the whole trust in the science was destroyed completely. So now it's such a hard work and such a difficult work that by the grace of Paramashiva and Swamiji, he's actually reviving it, showing the utility value, showing the how is actually workable, and reviving the greatest, the glory of the past of Sanatana Hindu Dharma, where we used to contribute 40% of the global GDP at some point, and showing it at least in one place in the planet Earth. And of course, we know that there are multiple sovereign locations of Kailas as announced. So this is to show that this is a workable model and contributing model, be it in a legal system, be it as a political system, be it as a social system, in the Varnashrama Dharma, which is again, Swamiji is reviving as a model community. So for the whole entire humanity to see how this is the best way to exist,
Yes.
and to implement it for the entire humanity.
Yes, Maharaj. Actually, here I'd like to add something is that fundamentally Hindus, we stopped even believing that a Hindu nation is even possible for us to have, for us to live in, for us to celebrate. That has become the current situation because it has been so deeply put into us that these are just mythological ideas. When it is only when we speak about Rama Rajya, when we speak about the time when Bhagavan Sri Rama landed and ruled the planet Earth, at that time, those ideals have just started feeling and becoming like, okay, there are just some stories which are there. But today, Swamiji is reviving that very same tradition, that very same Hindu civilization that once existed. And Swamiji, very beautifully, Swamiji told in all the 6 levels of Paramadvaita, starting literally now, Swamiji is building the identity, building the cognitions in everyone, and building the nation in the social and the moral level, and setting path as the right and the model for the Hindu civilization that at one point in time existed through the, as Swamiji beautifully revealed, the Paramadvaita in all the 6 levels. The first in the cognitive level, then the emotional level, then entering further deeper is going to be the social level, the moral level, the spiritual, and the environmental level. So, in all of these different levels, Swamiji has been making, the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism has been reviving Kailasa, showing to the Hindus all over the globe what exactly it is to live like them, live like Bhagwan Sri Rama, Bhagwan Sri Krishna, and live as Paramashiva on planet Earth. Because these ideas have just become just an idea, not something that is a practical, livable reality. And it's only Swamiji who is showing to the entire world that not just it is a reality, that every one of us is possible, it is the right way and going to be the future which is going to contribute to the entire world. Yes, Raja Maharaj, you could go ahead and add.
Yes, Maharaj. So the beautiful thing about the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism creating this sovereign nation of Kailasa is that he is a genius in his thinking, literally thinking in multi-levels, multi-dimensional, 10 years, 20 years ahead of every other world leader in the world. Yes, nowadays, if you see in the last 300 years of world history, how countries have been made, it is mostly for economic ventures, it is mostly for maybe even religious ventures. But to give a new hope to the whole humanity, Swamiji is giving the Kailasa nation to give the world and tell the world how Hinduism is going to rescue the whole world from the impending doom of, all of the negativity and the collective negativity there. So it's just this genius of how he's thinking at so many multiple levels and thinking for how people in the modern day will understand and cognize this Hindu nation. And in this way, Swamiji is bringing out the best of the Hindu traditions. This is the point that I wanted to share, Maharaj. is that he's thinking in such a multi-dimensional level, more than what you and us, all of us can understand. But it is such a beautiful way, and it's a beautiful thing to be a part of this grand revival, because he is talking about all of the grand revival of every single part of Hinduism. In fact, bringing all the Vimana Shastras out, reviving all of the Hindu temple sciences, and all of the power manifestation of that all of us adolescents can manifest. All of this is the possibility that he's bringing out. And this is what he's promising and showing to the world, that this is the possibility of what he's doing. And it is possible to be done in a nation, a place where you can have all of these opportunities. Yes, Maharaj.
Yes. Yes. Sukada Maharaj, please go ahead.
Yes, just wanted to add one point. See, despite of such a relentless and brutal persecution that Bhagwan and Kailasa had went through, how Swamiji beautifully established and showed that it is possible to, by following the Hindu principles, which is actually one of the main Hindu principles is ahimsa, ahimsa paramo dharma, which means that ahimsa is the ultimate principle. It's the ultimate core dharma, the ultimate core cosmic value. And how this is actually, if you see in the history, that there is no nation that has been established without either being a revolution or bloodshed or any kind of violence. If you see in the history, you won't find any such example. But in nowadays, with so much of violence and wars going on in the world, how beautifully Bhagwan was able to, with the grace of Paramashiva, he was able to establish Kailasa completely on the principle of ahimsa, showing how this is a practical reality for the modern day humanity to live these ultimate cosmic values of Hinduism.
Yes, that's very true, Maharaj. And in fact, another point that I wanted to add in over here is about how, at one point in time, that now that the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism is the 293rd Guru Mahasannidhanam of the Madurai Shyamala Pita Sarvajna Pitam, actually, when we look at the history dating back to each of these kingdoms that flourished and existed at one point in time, the kingdoms were themselves so powerful that they contributed so much to everyone, enriched and empowered everyone. That was because they had the political power and political freedom to make many of these principles as a fundamental way of life. And actually, one of the examples that I wanted to take in over here is from our own tradition, from the Madurai Adinam. This was actually during the part of the 289th Guru Mahasannidhanam of the Madurai Shyamala Pita Sarvajna Pitam. And at that time, the previous pontiff had attained Mahasamadhi, and the next successor, who was the 289th Guru Mahasannidhanam, was actually a minor. And this was already during the British rule that had come in. So he was a minor, and at that time there was the British Regency Act that was there. And so each of our kingdoms were so rich. In fact, Madurai Adinam at that point in time had over 10,000 kgs of gold. That's like 10 tons of gold that were there just in the Madurai Adinam alone. So what happened was that because the next Sannidhanam, the next pontiff was a minor, the British actually used and seized this opportunity, and they conveniently passed a law that until the minor becomes major, until the child becomes major, they will not be able to officially legally represent anything. So using this opportunity, they seized all the 10,000 kgs, 10 tons of gold, shipped it to the UK, and there, after when the Guru Mahasannidhanam grew old and reached age, the legal age, they never returned it back to us. The 10 tons of gold which went never came back. So this is in like one situation that we are speaking about. And despite all of this, despite all the hardships that we are going through directly in our own tradition, despite the hardships of the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, what Swamiji has been going through, due to all of these persecutions, which Swamiji rightfully inherits, And despite all of this, Swamiji has established Kailasa as a nation without any violence. That is like one of the biggest points that are there, where without any violence, the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism has established a nation as seed bank for Hinduism all over the world. Yes, Brahmasukha Maharaj, would you like to add in over here?
Yes, Maharaj. So yeah, as basically what we really need to understand fundamentally is that Hindu civilization is essentially a spiritual civilization. It is grounded and founded on principles which are, based on spirituality, spiritual principles, not some ideologies which are, byproducts of a mind or mental thought currents or whatever it is, which we see in many other civilizations. Right? How a true Hindu ecosystem can be preserved and passed on to the next generations? Who can do that job? The answer is very simple. Someone who has himself or herself experienced the truths given in the Vedas and Agamas, the source scriptures of Sanatana Hindu Dharma, one who is living these principles and being an example, a role model for the rest of the society. Only that person can truly revive and preserve Hinduism, the Hindu ecosystem for the future generation. And who is that person? Only an enlightened being, a guru, a master, or an incarnation, right? So that is why we see even in our history, all these kingdoms were essentially spiritual kingdoms, right? Even Madurai Adinam, the Madurai Samarajyam, and even, for example, Kanchi Sarvagnapeetham, Kashi Sarvagnapeetham, all these were essentially headed by a Guru Mahasannidhanam. A guru was the actual head of the kingdom, and king, political head, only acted as a regent acting on behalf of the guru. Guru was the true representative of the divine, and the divine, the Paramashiva, the supreme consciousness, was actual ruler of the kingdom. Now, this principle can only be preserved for the next generation by someone who is a guru himself. And talking about the current scale of atrocities against the Hindu civilization, it is an incarnation only who can truly revive Hindu civilization in the modern era. And by the grace of Paramashiva, we have that incarnation today amongst us, walking in flesh and blood as the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, Bhagavan Sri Nityananda Paramashivam, who has himself created this model Hindu ecosystem, authentic Hindu ecosystem, where people are actually living these principles and demonstrating for the rest of the world that these are true. Aham Brahmasmi is true. Shivoham is true. It is not just something written in the textbooks. All these principles and all the rest of the Hindu sciences are also true. The science of power manifestation is true. All these are demonstrated by Kailasa. So this ecosystem is what Kailasa is all about. And political sovereignty, by its very essence, and historically we have seen, is essential to even carry out this job, to carry out this work. Because without political sovereignty, the guru or the incarnation cannot do this job, because we don't even have control over our narrative, our institutions, our economic, social, cultural, political institutions, nothing we have control over. So
yes,
that's
Maharaj.
what makes
actually, I would like to add in over here, one more point that I wanted to actually add in here is that the Vedas and Agamas, which are the constitution of the Hindu nation, and these Vedas and Agamas, even the Hindus ourselves, at one point in time, we have started feeling that, okay, these are not the ways based on which we can govern ourselves. These are not the principles based on which the nation can be established, that the nation can be governed. But to bring legitimacy and to show that no, this is the way, and it is the Vedas and Agamas, which are the direct revelations of Paramashiva. They don't need any update. It is only the man-made constitutions that need update. But God-made constitutions, which are the Vedas and Agamas, revealed by Paramashiva himself, they do not need any update. They only need the incarnations to come and map it to every one of our life, to in the modern day, which is what Swamiji is doing for every one of us. And it is the hard work that Swamiji has put in to map all of this into our language for every one of us to understand this, to single-handedly create a nation to protect and preserve this tradition, and to once again give the confidence to the born and practicing Hindus that these ideals are the right and the most authentic way of living. So this is one of the greatest sacrifices that Bhagavan has done for every one of us, for us to have and celebrate Hinduism. Yes, Paramayoga Maharaj, you wanted to add in?
Yes, Nityanandam. So we have been talking also about the repercussions and the identity struggles of the Hindus nowadays. And many people, they are proud of being Hindu, but as per their understanding, they don't even know that they are supposed to get initiated into the Mula Mantra of their Ishta Devata. They don't even know what is the actual way of worship, how to actually make the offerings to their deity properly. And as Brahmasukha Maharaj has pointed out, only someone who has had the experience can be the fourth bearer of that tradition, but that itself is not enough. There's many enlightened masters who are not educated, who are not initiated into a specific sampradaya, but Swamiji, our beloved Swamiji, the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, he is the inheritor of the unbroken Guru Parampara from Paramashiva directly. So he has not only had the experience, he also got the initiation to first practice naturally, to learn, to study, to
Yes.
initiate, to initiate people, to initiate further.
Yes. Actually, that's a very important point, Maharaj. In fact, where Swamiji is not only reviving, but decoding it in the language that each and every one of us understand. Because we as Hindus, even when all these great principles of ahimsa, shanti, which is peace, when all of this is told, we Hindus start believing that, oh, no, 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 these are all Western ideas or the different ideas which we are trying to preach. Whether when Swamiji speaks about integrity, authenticity, responsibility, enriching, sampurti, shraddha, upayanam, apyayanam, unless and until Swamiji actually quotes the original Shastras, we Hindus ourselves start believing that, okay, these ideals and these ideologies are from other religions and other traditions, which is told here. No, it is actually from our tradition. It is the Hindu tradition, the Hindu civilization, which gifted, not just gifted, but made these great ideals and cognitions as a very life, not just in the cognitive level, not just in the emotional level, but in the environmental, the social, the moral level, which is like the entire society reverberated with these ideas, reverberated with these powerful cognitions. Yes, Tatwamraj, would you like to add over here? Sorry for the technical glitch. So these powerful cognitions that Swamiji has revived for each and every one of us, showing the true roots of authentic Hinduism, which are rooted in the Vedas and Agamas, everything which is backed by the Shastras. And this is the unfortunate situation of Hindus that we are all in, where even us, we ourselves don't believe that these great morals, these great cognitions, these great truths are from our tradition. We are so easily ready to be swayed away and carried that, okay, no, no, these are ideas from other ideologies or other sectors that have been put into us. So that is where Swamiji is taking on this multi layers, convincing us, untiringly working us that this is possible, personally giving us the experience that we can experience it practically for ourselves by giving us initiation into various powers, powerful cognitions, and working hard, established a sovereign nation where this can be protected, and now creating a social structure itself that was living with these ideals, with these powerful truths.
Yes, Maharaj. As you were sharing the whole system where the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism shares about the Shastra Pramana, the Apta Pramana, Atma Pramana, and Sakshi Pramana, all the four Pramanas in everything, even as simple as yoga, the yoga that we do every single morning. Nowadays, there has been so much of dilution in the yoga, and some people, even some faiths, started claiming that whether it is beer yoga or faiths started claiming the yogas from their tradition. And because of all this dilution, the Supreme Court of Hinduism in the Nityananda Yoga has clearly given the Shastra Pramana for every single asana, the Atma Pramana, and every single Pramana, and how even the physical benefits have been scientifically quantified by the Sakshi Pramana. So, in every single way, the Supreme Court of Hinduism has brought back the legitimacy. Literally, they debunk the theory of Varnashrama Dharma, they debunk the theory of that Hinduism is actually the oldest religion. The colonialists even debunked all of the history of Hinduism, saying it is just mythology. Whereas the Supreme Court of Hinduism has brought back that legitimacy and literally made it foolproof that even when a practicing Hindu or a born Hindu comes and looks at the way that the yoga, the Nityananda yoga is being conducted, they know that it is from the authentic source. It is from the real source. Like this in every aspect, whether it is the rituals that are conducted in the various Kailasas around the world. Each ritual is micromanaged by the Supreme Court of Hinduism to follow the authentic agamic scriptures and the injunctions that have been set down, the paddhatis that have been set down by Paramashiva in the Vedas and Agamas. Like this in every sector, the Supreme Court of Hinduism, just for us to re-recognize, to cognize our own legitimacy in Hinduism, the Supreme Court of Hinduism has brought back legitimacy in every single way, in every single aspect of our lives, whether it's the Charyapada, Kriyapada, Yogapada, and the Jnanapada.
And all of you, every one of you who are watching this from all over the world, globally, all of you have an opportunity, have a chance to become part of this great civilization, this great nation. Kailasa is the first nation for all the Hindus around the world. You may be anywhere in any part of the world, but Kailasa is the first nation for every Hindu. Whether you're a born Hindu or you're a practicing Hindu, Kailasa is your first nation. And every one of you have the opportunity to be a part of Kailasa. You can either sign up to become a member of the Rajya Sabha, which is the Hindu parliament of Kailasa, by signing up for the link, the ecitizen.info/PSS, where we have the Paramashiva Sena program, where every one of you will be trained not only to understand these and not only to live this, but to take this forward to the entire world and create a social ecosystem that understands these ideals of the Sanatana Hindu Dharma, and where we can actually live this and give the truth and create an ecosystem that lives and practices these truths. So you can become a member of the Hindu Parliament by registering at ecitizen.info/PSS. You also have the other opportunity where every one of you can become Kailasavasis, which is citizens of Kailasa. Multiple sovereign territories of Kailasa have now been opened to public, and you can come and get trained to become Paramashiva himself, to become the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, Bhagavan himself, as an ambassador of Paramashiva, as an ambassador of the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, living, taking forward these great truths, standing with the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism in this great revival and shouldering the responsibility. So if you want to become a citizen of Kailasa, if you want to become a sannyasi of the Kailasa, of the Sovereign Order of Kailasas Nityananda, go ahead. The link is projected for every one of you on the screen. You can register yourself to become an e-citizen, or you can become a citizen by registering yourself at ecitizen.info/Kailasavasis. So we strongly encourage every one of the viewers who are sitting with us from all around the world to take this opportunity to become either members of the Rajya Sabha of the Hindu Parliament by signing up for ecitizen.info/PSS, or sign up to become a citizen of Kailasa by logging into ecitizen.info/Kailasavasi. Now, this brings us towards the end of today's discussion, today's debate and panel discussion about the colonialism and how it has had its impacts on the Hindu community worldwide, and what is the solution for this. We'd like to thank all the members who've joined us today, all the Kailasavasis who have joined us today for this debate. Thank you all for joining once again. And I'd like to offer my sincere gratitude to the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, Bhagavan Sri Nityananda Paramashivam, for giving us all this opportunity to understand who really we are, what really is Hinduism, and reviving that in each and every one of us, and the hard work, struggles, and the sacrifices that Bhagavan has done for each and every one of us. So with this, by offering our gratitude to Swamiji, we'd like to close this particular session with the Purna Mantra. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat Sarvam Bhagavat Shri Nityananda Paramashiva Padukarpanamastu. Om Nityanandam.
I bless you all. Let you all open all your three eyes and manifest the powers of Mahasadashiva. Om Nityananda Paramashivo